Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, and thank you for joining me for another journey into the world of shinobi. Before we begin, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who listens, supports the channel, and enjoys these stories. Today's story is titled The Littlest Sannin 2, Sound in Autumn. This is a sequel to The Littlest Sannin, in which Naruto was raised by the Tsunade, Jiraiya and Orochimaru. This is a fan-made story inspired by the world of Naruto. All characters in the original universe belong to their respective creators. This narration is created for entertainment purposes as part of a transformative storytelling experience. The story itself was written by EroSlackerMicha, and full credit goes to the original author. If you would like to read the original version, the link to this story is included in the video description below. If you like my content and want to keep up with future updates, hit that subscribe button and don't forget leave a like if you enjoyed the video. It not only helps me but helps with YouTube algorithm. Now sit back, relax and enjoy. Chapter 1. Tsunade stood at the bed of her adopted son. Her hand stroked the blonde bangs away from his face. He's so still. Tsunade turned to see the four girls that each had a piece of his heart. Her gaze landed on Kin. What? It's unnatural, she said. Tsunade nodded. She knew the girl was right, and each of them was coping in their own ways. Jiraiya looked solemn and hadn't spoken since the battle when she saw Naruto laying there on the ground. Haku had gone catatonic. Temari, when she returned from her mission, had gone on a rampage. I think Konoha's going to be nursing more injured ninja for after the battle than for during it. She thought of the wind user and her fans. Her gaze slipped to the other side of the bed where Anko was sitting. She's taking it just as bad. Anko alternated between Kabuto's room and this one. Her sleep was non-existent, and Tsunade would know, as she hadn't slept since the battle 3 days ago either. Kin, see if you can find us some food, she said. The girl looked at her like she was insane. Take Jiraiya with you and also check on Kimimaro. The girls left, reluctantly. Tsunade knew that Shizen was making the rounds of the Oto ninja. They'd commandeered a floor of the hospital and kicked all Konoha nin and citizens off of it. The door opened. How is he, Haim? Orochimaru asked, coming in. He looked as tired as her. No change. Where is Jiraiya? She asked. Since that day Jiraiya had vanished after telling them about the seal that Nadas had placed on the blonde. Flashback. Jiraiya skidded to a halt on his knees. He looked at the seal and gulped. Oh shit. Do something! Tsunade screamed at him. I can't, Jiraiya said. You can. You're a seal master. Tsunade looked at him. I can, Haim. This seal is a master seal. It's called the 5-palm elemental seal. There's a reason. If I make a mistake removing it, it would make Naruto's heart explode. It's designed to lock a person in their mind and seal their chakra away. It was used 100 years ago on prisoners of war that were too important to kill, but they couldn't take the chance of escaping. Tsunade looked at him, her tears and eyes begging him to heal the boy they raised as their own. Do something, she pleaded. And flashback. He's gone to see the monks of Mount Enya, Orochimaru said, looking down at the blonde that never had been this still before. His hand touched Naruto's. It will be fine, Tsuhaime. Jiraiya won't fail. How can you be so certain? She demanded, ignoring Haku and Anko. Neither were paying attention, both lost in their own pain over the blonde for different reasons. Because he might be a baka, but Jiraiya would never fail anything for Naruto, Orochimaru said. He's our child. The child of the Sannin. Jiraiya might be a goof, and a pervert, but there is nothing he, nor any of us wouldn't do for our boy. Tsunade looked at Naruto once more. Her hands brushed his hair. I'm going to kill Nadas, she said after several minutes of silence. I know, Orochimaru said, and he vowed to be there as well. The skull-masked nin had harmed their children. He looked at his niece and saw her broken expression. Kabuto's recovering slowly, but he's getting better. If it wasn't for his healing factor, he'd be as dead as Kankuro. The puppet master's siblings were ghosts around the floor themselves. Gaara had taken to keeping guard outside this room. His gaze had gone flat and dead. The only ones to get through to him have been Temari and Hinata. Both girls were asleep in a room. Since the battle, the Oto group had moved out of the hotel and set up camp on the top floor of the hospital. Sakan, Yukon, Jirobo, and Kitamaru are on the roof. Ryu is sacked out in front of the elevator, and Temari and Hinata, when awake and not watching over Gaara or Naruto, patrol the corridors. He sighed. We should return to Oto. At least there I know there aren't any holes in security. What did Sensei say about Nada's message? Tsunade asked. Orochimaru took a moment to recall and sighed. The scroll was a taunt for us. He wants us to come to him, and he'll remove the seal from Naruto. Tsunade growled. All of that, and they take the 3 Uchiha and Hatake. All the Sharingans are now gone. Jiraiya's spy network confirmed that the 3 Uchiha were blind during the attack. What game is Nada's playing? Tsunade said as she checked the machines hooked to Naruto. It's like he's following different orders. Orochimaru nodded. I'm disturbed by what that sorcerer Shang Tsung had done. After his death, the circle vanished, and we didn't get to see what it was. Where's his body? Tsunade asked. Gone, like all their other dead and wounded. It's like they had recall seals on them or something. Tsunade growled. Back to Nada's message. He mentioned he is done with Konoha as they have nothing he wants. A few more taunts to us and we'd be seeing a messenger soon. And Konoha's council? They aren't happy and blaming us and Naruto for the invasion and the loss of the Sharingan. Of course they are. She muttered. The door opened and revealed Shizun, who looked tired. How's Kimimaro doing? She asked her apprentice. The internal damage is taking the new treatment, and the outer wound is growing over with bone. With bone? Is something wrong with his Kekkei Genkai? Tsunade asked. No, it seems to be a natural development. I asked him while he was conscious and he said it mentioned that extreme wounds would grow bone armor at a certain point in his development. Tsunade sighed as Shizun checked Naruto and made notes on the clipboard. She knew Tsunade was monitoring, but she needed to do something to keep herself from breaking down as well. Kabuto's been in and out of consciousness. I've had to do a chakra infusion as his healing factor keeps using it up with the amount of damage he sustained. Enko stood and left the room, and they all knew she was going to see Kabuto. Haku still hadn't moved or twitched. We need to do something about her, Lady Tsunade, Shizun said as the ice user was motionless, her eyes on Naruto's form. What do you suggest? Shizun bit her lip. We could ask the Hokage for help from the Yamanaka clan. Their mind arts. They hate Naruto, and to have one anywhere near him while he's vulnerable would be dangerous. Tsunade said, remembering her meeting with Inoichi during the time Naruto was training for the finals of the Chunin exam. We need to do something, Tsunade said, looking at Orochimaru. Let's go talk to Sarutobi-sensei, he said. He saw her look at Naruto and put a hand on her shoulder. Shizun will stay here, and Gaara's right outside the door, he said. He could tell she didn't want to leave the boy she thought of as her son. He'll be fine here, I promise. Tsunade paused and Orochimaru summoned a man-snake hybrid. Guard this room. Anyone other than our people come in, kill. The man-snake hissed and bowed its head and pulled out a curved sword and stepped out to stand with Gaara. Tsunade summoned a small slug. Keep an eye on Naruto-kun, she said. Any change or someone we don't know comes in, get me a message right away. Yes, milady, the slug said and took up a position atop the nightstand. Let's go, she said, her gaze hardening. XX. The Hokage's office. Enter. Hiruzen Sarutobi called out. The battle several days ago took a lot out of him, and he was still feeling the effects, but he had a job to do and a village to repair. His eyes widened at seeing Tsunade step in, followed by Orochimaru. My poor girl, he said, standing and rounding the desk, paused, but was surprised when she pulled him into a hug. He felt her shake as she fought to keep from crying. How is he? He asked Orochimaru. No change, the Otokuge said. Jiraiya's gone to see the monks of Mtenya, but we might have to take Nada's up on his offer and meet with him on his terms. The snake Sannin said. Is there anything I can do? Sarutobi asked. Keep your people away, Orochimaru said. We're very high-strung and I don't think any of my people will hesitate to kill first and ask questions later. Sarutobi nodded. I've already ordered the hospital staff to stay off the top floor and posted Umbu on the stairs, and I'll have the elevator locked down, requiring a key that I'll give to you. Orochimaru nodded his thanks. Then I hope to get Gaara to sleep, he said, and explained how the Jinchuriki of the One Tail had stood guard since. Anything else? Sarutobi asked. Keep your counsel away. I've been answering them. What? Why? Sarutobi was surprised. This was the first he'd heard of it since meeting Orochimaru right after the battle and reading the scroll Nada's left. They seemed to think we were part of Nada's attack. Fools! Sarutobi hissed. I'll take care of it. Sarutobi hugged Tsunade tighter. The girl was his student at one time, and to him that made her family, and he thought of Naruto as a grandson as well. We'll make Nada's pay, even if we have to chase him to the ends of the earth. Chapter 2. Konoha General Hospital. Gaara looked at the one person outside of his sister that he trusted the most. Naruto will be okay, Gaara-kun, Hinata said softly. He amended his previous view in adding her to her trusted list. The past month had been interesting for him in many ways. It is rare to see him so still outside of meditation, and even then there are twitches, Gaara said. His gaze went to his sister. His blackened circled eyes could see the strain she was under keeping herself together when he knew all she wanted to do was break down. His gaze went to Naruto once more. You best wake up soon, my friend. Temari and the others are falling apart without you. Gaara had been shocked when Nada's had struck Naruto. At first he thought his friend was just unconscious, but then Jiraiya explained the seal and he felt dread well up in him. Shikaku was concerned at what could hurt Naruto, and the Kyuubi could be done to him, and his container as well. Gaara's eyes landed on the last figure in the room. Haku's shut down almost like Naruto, except she has no seal. She's awake, but unresponsive. Would you like me to get you something to eat? Gaara looked at Hinata and nodded. She started to go, but he reached out and took her hand, surprising both her and himself. I am sorry, he said. For what, Gaara-kun? the Hyuga asked, her eyes wide at his nervousness. I am not giving you the proper attention, He was uncertain on how to continue. Until he'd moved to Oto and made friends with Naruto, he'd been alone. His own siblings had feared him. It's okay, Hinata said, her free hand rubbing his while it held her other one. He is your friend, and he's mine. I understand, she said. He nodded, then brought her hand up and kissed her knuckles. I will make it up to you, he said. Hinata blushed. I'll be back with some tea and rolls, she said and left the room. She's good for you. Gaara looked over to his sister who was sitting at Naruto's side, her hand holding his, her thumb rubbing over his knuckles. He will be fine. Lady Tsunade and Lord Orochimaru won't let this stand, he said, trying to make her and himself believe that the blonde would wake up. It was only a matter of when. You love him, Gaara stated. Temari nodded. We all do, she said, looking at Haku, then back to Naruto. This loud, energetic blonde wormed his way into our hearts. He's kind, patient, gentle. She closed her eyes. He doesn't show favoritism to any of us, but loves us all equally, and he makes sure that we're taken care of and are having fun. She looked at Gaara and nodded her head at the battle fan by the door. Did you know that he had that specially made for me? It's a lightweight but super strong metal from the village hidden amongst the stars. Gaara looked at it. The craftsmanship was masterwork. He did something like that for each of us. Haku got a pair of wrist blades. Kin got some bond needles with seals to return them to the pouch. Tayuya, he went and got her a flute from the Royal Academy of Music, along with sheet battle music so she can do more than those ugly summons of hers. Gaara knew Naruto cared for all 4 girls. He realized how much the blonde thought of all of them with the thoughtfulness of the gifts. I wish he was awake so I could ask him, Gaara said. For what? Temari asked her younger brother. Advise. The Jinchuriki of the one-tailed Ichibi said. The siblings kept vigil over the blonde and Haku in silence until Hinata returned. XX. Shizen, please, how is Naruto? Kimimaro asked. She'd avoided telling him as she knew the leader of the Sound Five would blame himself. The truth, please, Kimimaro asked. I can tell by the looks of the others that things are not well. Shizen sighed and looked at the man in the bed. He's stabilized, but he won't wake up. She told him about the seal and the message. She saw the look in his eyes get bleaker. I failed, he said. No, Shizen said, touching his arm. You didn't fail. Nada's is a foul, evil being. Jiraiya will. What if he can't? Kimimaro asked. Then Lady Tsunade and Lord Orochimaru are contemplating on meeting Nada's, she finally said after being quiet. Kimimaro nodded. I require aid in preparing to move. You can't, Shizen said. Kimimaro, you were badly injured. You'll need. I will not stay in bed while Lady Tsunade goes to meet with that monster and Naruto-sama is incapacitated. Now either you get me healed and prepared for travel, or I will seek another doctor. Shizen looked at the man who had sworn his life to her teacher, and the boy she saw as a younger brother or nephew. Very well, she said and focused chakra into her hand. Accelerated healing will hurt, and it will take some time off your life. Do what must be done. Pain is no concern, and if my life can be given for Naruto's or Lady Tsunade's, then so be it. Shizen nodded and began her work. A tear slipped from her eye as the man she respected gritted his teeth in pain while she worked on mending his body faster. XX. The roof of Konoha General Hospital looked like an armed camp. 4 members of the Sound Five prowled the roof. 2 civilians had tried to gain access during the night. Their cooling bodies were to the side under a tarp. They would report it to Lord Orochimaru later. Taiyuya, you should be with. Jirobo started, but the redhead's glare stopped him. When the 2 Konoha citizens used ladders figuring they would use the roof to slip in and kill the Kyuubi brat, they weren't prepared for Taiyuya's assault as she used some of the music Naruto had gotten for her to blast them with lightning and slice them with wind. After their bodies hit the roof, she proceeded to kick the hell out of the corpses and swearing with each blow. It had been Sukan and his twin who pulled her off, but it had taken a word from Anko, who had heard the commotion, to settle the girl down. Now the curse-spewing redhead was pacing the roof like an angry jungle cat, looking for someone stupid enough to try again so she could unleash her anger, aggression upon them. Her team knew that fear, anger, and sadness were the fuel keeping her going. They saw as she would slip down to the room with the whisker-marked blonde. Kidamaru watched as his teammate hurt, but like the others they were smart enough not to say anything or have what was keeping her going turned on them. Anko warned it was only a matter of time before she broke down, and ordered them to keep an eye on her and radio her when it happened. It was nearing late afternoon when they heard it. Are you sure the demon is on the top floor? A male voice said. Yes. They said those Oto Nin took over the top floor. They are actually concerned for the monster. The males on the roof flinched as Taiyuya went still, her expression hardening. Well, this is Konoha, and we don't care what the Oto Nin think. We'll finish off the demon while it's weak and be labeled big damn heroes. The grappling hook sank into the ledge and Jirobo was going to grab it and toss it away, but Taiyuya's growl froze him in place. She pulled out her flute and waited, listening intently as they heard someone climbing up the backside of the hospital. The 2 figures reached the top. Their backs were to the roof. They were ignorant as the redhead stood there and slowly brought the flute to her lips. Her sonnet of death was the last thing the 2 Chunin heard as death rose up and destroyed them. XX. Mount Enya. Jiraiya had arrived at dawn, and after speaking with the master of the temple he'd been allowed access to the ancient library hidden deep in the mountain. His hands shook with exhaustion as he hadn't slept or eaten since the day of the finals for the Chunin exam in Konoha. Damn it, Jiraiya. You brag and boast, and when it comes time to do something about it, you are as useful as a fork while eating soup. He read scroll after scroll, the lantern refreshed by young monks who asked him if he needed anything only to be ignored as he pored over ancient text. Come on, Jiraiya. Naruto needs you. You can't fail him. You can't lose him. He thought as he closed another ancient scroll and put it in the pile to be returned. Damn it to the 7 levels of hell! He roared as he slammed his fist into the table. Ever since his last encounter with Nada's, Jiraiya had been disturbed. The bastard has gone out of his way to taunt us. And with him calling me EroSlackerMicha, there have only been 2 people who ever called me that. One is dead and the other is in a hospital bed. Grabbing a new scroll, Jiraiya opened it and started reading. His mind divided about finding help for the boy he along with his teammates had taken in as their own, and the identity of the skull-masked Nin who had been taunting them for over a decade. Chapter 3. Konoha. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked over the village from the balcony of his office. Damned fools. They are going to destroy us all. He'd been in a meeting with the council when they called for the capture of Naruto Uzumaki. Flashback. He is the reason we've totally lost the Sharingan. Councilwoman Haruno said, still distraught over the death of her daughter in the second exam. If it wasn't for that damn demon child, this Nada's would never have come to Konoha. We don't know that, Hayashi Hyuga said. It's obvious the man had plans, as we all saw that he'd captured Itachi, and from the looks of the other man, that was Madara Uchiha. You're protecting them because your daughter has been whored out to the sand demon, Haruno said. We all know you made a devil's pact, Hyuga, she continued. Councilwoman Haruno, please calm yourself, Sarutobi said. We are not going to do anything to Naruto Uzumaki. He is not a citizen of, nor is he a ninja of Konoha. To attempt anything you suggest would bring war upon us from several villages that have ties with the Hidden Sound village. Let them come, Kazan Sanza said. The Leaf village is the strongest. You're a fool. Didn't this invasion show how vulnerable we truly are? Sarutobi cut off the known puppet of Danzo. We currently do not have the resources to handle the missions we have, much less declare war. Oto has been here in good faith, and you all want to bring us to war. Sarutobi, your intentions to the demon are well known. This council can't allow that thing to roam, Nilia Hamura said. The girl had taken up her grandparents' seat, and Hiruzen could see the same hate in the girl's eyes. My answer is final. No actions will be taken against Oto. The civilians and ninja that continue to try and attack them at the hospital. They've been murdered. Haruno nearly screamed. Those monsters killed them. They are protecting the child of their leader. The top floor is locked down and it is posted so. Those that attempt take their lives into their own hands. Saminezuka spoke up. Did they really need to start dropping dead bodies on those below? The previous day, a mob of civilians were attempting to lay siege to the hospital. The sound ninja on the roof threw dead bodies down on the mob, which scattered in panic. Tayuya has been reprimanded by Orochimaru, and he apologizes for her actions. She is stressed with Naruto's current condition and is sickened by the acts of our village. As am I, he thought. Therefore I am declaring martial law. 3 Umbu squads will be guarding the hospital, and only real injuries will be dealt with on the 3rd floor. Until the Otonin leave, the upper floors are locked down and there will be no visitations allowed. Anyone attempting to gain access to the top floor via the stairs, elevator, or via the roof will be executed, their homes and possessions forfeited to Oto as reparations for attempts on their leader's son's life. Angry shouts filled the chamber. Sarutobi counted, including the Hyuga 6 clans that agreed with him. And flashback. A knock on his door had him turn. Enter. Orochimaru stepped in. The 3rd Hokage took in his former student's appearance, and the recent events weighed heavily on the Snake Sannin. Any change? Hiruzen asked. Orochimaru shook his head, his eyes shadowed with lack of sleep. Tsuheim is getting desperate, and we've still not heard back from Jiraiya. I am sorry, my boy, the 3rd said. We're packing up. We've made arrangements to take Naruto and our other wounded back to Oto, Orochimaru said. If things keep acting up like they are, you won't have a population left. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. Old man, you need to remember, Naruto has 4 possible girlfriends, a very protective big sister, an aunt that is a master of poisons, and has Tsunade as a mother. That doesn't include how my own guard feel about him. Hiruzen winced as the mental image of the amount of damage that group could do to Konoha. And Gaara himself, while containing the one tail, would be too much for Konoha, Orochimaru said. So, for the safety of Konoha, we are leaving. The third nodded. Allow me to give you an honor guard, people I trust to get you back to Odo. Orochi, your people are hurting. The captain of your guard is wounded. Please, let me see to your safety. Orochimaru sighed. Very well, sensei, he said tiredly. I will inform Tsuhime. I will have them meet you outside the hospital. The Hokage said, already mentally forming a protection detail in his mind as his former student left. XX. The litters carrying the 3 injured was placed in the center of the formation. Kimimaro and Kabuto were awake. Anko took a place between the 2 litters. Tsunade stood next to Naruto's with Gaara ahead. Temari was behind the litter with Hinata as they led Haku to Naruto's side and sat her on the same litter. Kin and Taiuya were roving with Ryu. The other members of the Sound Five were on guard as well. Shizen was with Kimimaro keeping him in place. Orochimaru looked at his people. 2 dead, 2 badly wounded, 3 if you counted Naruto, and 1 catatonic. He sighed as Sarutobi approached with a group of ninja. Hime, summon your slugs, he said, and she did as told without argument, and that worried Orochimaru as Tsunade loved to argue over every detail. The horse-sized slugs were hooked up to the litters and the Oto group was ready to leave. Sensei, Orochimaru said. He saw Asuma was there along with a woman with red eyes. Orochi, Hiruzen said. Introductions were made. The honor guard were Asuma Sarutobi, Chusa Akamichi, Shikaku Nara, Kurina Yuhi, Saminuzuka, her daughter Hana along with their dogs. Gai Mado, Ibiki Marino, Gekko Hate and Yugao Yuzuki. I would trust each of them with my life, the Hokage said. And I trust them with yours and Naruto's, the old man said. Orochimaru nodded. He watched as his former sensei walked up to the litter with the blonde, and Orochimaru saw how old his teacher actually was as the old man looked at Naruto sadly. My boy, how many times can I continue to fail you? The Hokage asked. He pulled out a scroll and handed it to Tsunade. Give this to him when he wakes. She took it and bowed her head. Hiruzen ran his hand through the blonde's hair and whispered something to the unconscious blonde before he backed away. He looked at his son. Keep them safe. Asuma, with a serious look on his face, nodded. As safe as the Fire Lord, his son said. I'll keep the genin close. The Hokage told the Jounin that had students. He had plans to work on their training while the adults were away. The group headed for the gate. The Hokage walked with them. They were about to pass through when a figure appeared before them in the middle of the road. Kakashi? Guy said. They'd all been told he'd been captured. The Jounin made not a sound, but his hands flew through a variety of seals. There was the sound of chirping, as if 1,000 birds were in the air. Sarutobi realized what it was. Chidori! Stop him! He ordered. Kakashi lunged. XX. Mount Enya. Jiraiya cursed as he put aside another scroll. He was reaching for another one, ignoring the jaw-cracking yawn as he hadn't slept since that day. Kukukuku. A chuckle sounded behind him. Jiraiya was on his feet and looking around the darkened room. Who's there? Show yourself, he said, blinking, trying to get his eyes to focus. The figure that stepped into the lamplight had him go cold. Really, Jiraiya, has it been so long? The skull Masnin said. Of course, all those old tomes will rot your mind, Nada said. You bastard. Jiraiya lunged, but Nada stepped aside. Now, Toad Sage, you wouldn't want to do that here. Some of these scrolls and books are a millennium old, Nada said, mockingly shaking a finger at him. I'll kill you. Jiraiya hissed, more like his teammate Orochimaru's snakes than anything. You won't find the cure here, old man, Nada said as he dodged another attack from Jiraiya, content that the Toad Sannin wouldn't use any jutsu here. How would you know? Jiraiya growled. Because I removed all of the texts that had that seal in them, Nada said. Do you really think I would be stupid enough to let you fix the Gaki that quickly after all the trouble I went through to manipulate events to my favor? What favor? Your attack to wipe out Konoha failed, Jiraiya said. Of course it did. I didn't use a sizable force. That was just a distraction, Nada's agreed. He relaxed his stance, seeing that Jiraiya was going to listen instead of attacking. My goal was never Konoha. I could care less about that village, Nada said with venom in his voice. And the Sharingan is dead. That bloodline should never have been allowed to flourish like it had. Jiraiya was confused. You say Konoha wasn't your goal, but I used the confusion to get the Sharingan. I wish you and the others would have listened and stepped out of the exam when I offered them the chance. It would have saved your students, and Naruto-kun wouldn't be in the way he is now. Well, at least not this soon, Nada's admitted. All of that, just to remove the Sharingan? We were going to seal it. Bah! It would breathe through. Even Hitachi's genetics were altered by his possessing it. Sasuke, Itachi and that fool Madara. Really, he thought he was a god, Nada said with disgust. Screamed like a bitch as I ripped out his eyes. Who are you? Jiraiya asked, as Nada spoke of the atrocities he did to the Uchihas. Can't you guess, EroSlackerMicha? Nada's chuckled and faded into the shadows. Get back to Odo, Naruto will need you, I'll be in touch. And Nada's was gone, leaving Jiraiya with more questions and no answers except a sinking feeling in his gut. Minato? Is it possible? But how? Jiraiya thought as he headed for the door to tell the head monk he was leaving. I've got a bad feeling about this, Jiraiya thought. Chapter 4. Kakashi weaved around and leapt over the ninja in his way. His target wasn't Naruto, it was the Hokage. He nearly got there before he was body tackled by Inoichi Yamanaka. The clan leader's hands sped through a jutsu, and he slammed his hand into Kakashi's forehead. The lone eye rolled up and Kakashi was unconscious. Inoichi? The Hokage said. We've got trouble, Lord Hokage. The Uchiha are in the council chamber and... An explosion rocked Konoha, and the gathered leaf Nin watched as the tower went up in flames and slowly crumbled. Inoichi saw this and slumped. Too late, he said. What happened? The Hokage asked. Not sure. The council was meeting about. He shot a look to where Naruto was, then shook his head. When Sasuke, Itachi and Madara appeared in the middle of the chamber, they had their eyes wrapped like they did during the invasion. Inoichi shook his head as his friends came up and put hands on his shoulders as he was realizing his mistakes. They started attacking everyone. We're not sure how they could see. I was outside the room getting umbu when the doors were sealed. Some strange red seal with a skull mark glowed. I came to get you when I saw Kakashi. He looked at the man who'd been missing since the battle. Shikaka pulled the Hittite back to reveal the empty socket. Nada's. The Hokage said the name with disgust. Umbu were appearing. Get search and rescue on the tower's remains, he ordered. He looked at Orochimaru. It seems the leaf is burning around me, the Hokage said. Orochi, I have a favor to ask. What, sensei? The Snake Sannin asked. I need to send the current Genin and Academy students away. It's no longer safe here. Orochimaru nodded. Taiyuya, Jiroba will remain until your genin and students are ready and lead them to the village. The fuck I will, Taiyuya said. I am not leaving. Ken said to her friend. What would Naruto want you to do? Fuck, the redhead said and crossed her arms. She looked at her kin and Temari. You take care of him. I'll double time the shit out of the Konoha genin and little shits. No you won't, Temari said. You're a softy with children. Taiyuya's curses had birds miles around, fleeing in terror, and Orochimaru becoming more pale with each colorful metaphor uttered. Quite a mouth on her, the Hokage said. Orochimaru sighed. We need to go. The latest attack making him nervous, being exposed with Naruto in this much danger. Inoichi picked up Kakashi and shouldered him. I'm going with. I'll need somewhere secure to check him over. Tsunade growled. And why should we trust you? After what you said about my son? Inoichi looked ashamed. I spoke in haste, and for that I am sorry. Tsunade looked at him, then without a word turned back to keeping watch over the comatose blonde. Shizen and Temari exchanged a look, the blonde fan user taking up a spot behind Yamanaka without appearing to do it. Taiyuya, bring the genin in when you can, Orochimaru said to the redhead. She looked like she wanted to say something, then a look at the whisker-marked blonde softened her eyes. Keep him safe, my lord, she said low and turned around to wait for the Hokage. Move out, Orochimaru called. He looked at the old man who was important to him for so many years. Stay safe, sensei. Don't die for this place. Orochimaru left last. Hiruzen watched them go, the two Otonin waiting silently, Taiyuya's feet shuffling as she fought hard to not say the first thing that came to mind. XX. Otogekure. Shizen sighed as she made the rounds. They'd settled back in Oto, the village above and below being put on full alert. The villagers had not been pleased to hear what had happened in Konoha, and even less pleased to hear about Naruto's condition. The Konoha ninja that were with the group were given dark looks of distrust and disgust. Inoichi had been given a room to do the mental evaluation of Kakashi, but was waiting for permission from Orochimaru, who insisted that they delay the mind walk until he could be present. The Otokage was seeing to his village, and as a leader, as much as he wanted to be by the bedside of the boy that was family, he had to see to the citizens despite their own protests for him to be with the boy many felt was the crown prince. Making the rounds, Shizen paused in the doorway of Kimimara's room. The leader of the Sound Five was not in his bed like he was supposed to be. He was currently pulling on his boots. Where the hell do you think you're going? You're not cleared yet, Shizen said. Kimimaro continued moving slowly. Regardless, I have my duty, the bone user said in a flat tone. Shizen put the folders and clipboard she had been carrying down and stalked around the bed and put a hand on his shoulder. She saw him wince and gave him the cold look reserved for stubborn patients, her mentor and a blonde boy when she caught him in trouble. Lay back down this instant or I will dislocate your muscles until you are fully healed to my satisfaction. Kimimaro looked at her. Shizen glared. Kimimaro sighed and allowed her to help him put his legs back up. You're healing at an accelerated rate, don't push it, she said after running a diagnostic. You didn't aggravate anything, good. She looked at him. Don't look at me like that, Kimimaro said. Like what? Shizen asked. The pair looked into one another's eyes, either saying anything for a long time. XX. Oto, Upper Village. Taiyuya felt the tension leaving her as the mock village into view. The farmers and merchants that lived here smiled at seeing one of the Oto headbands with the group of genin. Ms. Taiyuya. She looked and noticed one of the hidden guards. The genin of Konoha. Jirobo is coming behind, with the Hokage, she said. I need to report to Lord Orochimaru, bivouac these turds in the restricted zone. She kept walking. Hey, the blonde genin called. Ino yelled. You can't leave us here. Can have, Taiyuya said, not stopping as she went for the main building and used the hidden lift. Once she was in the base she paused. She knew she had to report, but there was something more important than that, and her feet were already leading her to the hospital wing. She slipped past the duty nurse and went to where she knew he would be. She nodded to Kadamura, who was guarding the hall that ended in a dead end. Any change? He shook his head, his 6 arms crossed. Taiyuya entered the room and wasn't surprised to see Tsunade sitting there, nor was she surprised to see Haku. The ice user was looking paler than last. Her eyes had shadows under her eyes. Tsunade looked up and Taiyuya saw that the slug summoner had bags under her eyes as well. Deciding to say something as the sound of the support machines was soft beeping was depressing. The Konoha genin are in the zone up above. Taiyuya reached the bedside of the silent blonde. Her gaze softened. No change, Tsunade said. Her voice was showing the strain the woman was experiencing. Any word from Master Jiraiya? Tsunade shook her head. Orochi is sending runners. In a couple more days is the supposed deadline from Nada's. Tayuya put a shaky hand on the blonde's forehead and brushed his bangs aside before her hand moved to his cheek and traced the whisker marks. One of the brats said her dad's one of those mind walkers. Tsunade nodded. He's with Orochimaru in interrogation of Kakashi. They found a seal traced into the eye where his Sharingan had been. Who is this fucker? Tayuya asked. He's mocking you and the other Sannin, and he's taunting the rest of us. Tsunade shook her head. Not sure. He's been a pain in our ass for years. We met him in the wilds before we founded Oto. Tsunade said, remembering the fear in her gut when she'd been hit and helpless as Naruto was confronted the first time by Nadas as a child. Tsunade sighed. I have asked Orochi to have Inoichi brought here after he's done with Kakashi. You really going to let one of those hateful Konoha bastard near him? Tsunade sighed. I need to know, she said softly. Seeing him like this. Tayuya nodded. Where are the others? Tsunade snorted. Orochi's keeping them busy. Temari is with Sakan and Yukan checking the border. Kin has been assigned as a runner and is making her way to Mtenya. Tayuya nodded and looked at Haku. And Frostbite here. She looked at the other girl and knew that she herself might have ended up like her too. Shaking her head, she looked around. And Anko? She's with Kabuto right now. He's been awake for a bit longer period. If he didn't have a healing factor to rival Naruto's, he'd be dead, the redhead said. Tsunade closed her eyes. Lady Tsunade, when the time comes, I request permission to come with and deal with this Nada's fucker, Tayuya said. You too? She opened her eyes and saw the girl's look. Kin and Temari already made the request. Tayuya nodded. They might compete for Naruto's heart, but she knew that all four of them loved the blonde with every fiber of their being. Me. Tsunade and Tayuya looked up, seeing Haku looking up. Too, the ice user said. Her hollow eyes looked at Naruto. Haku? The dark-haired girl nodded slowly. Welcome back, Tsunade said. She knew it would only be time before she came around, and now that she had a goal, she nearly had a moment of pity for Nadas, as not only did he have her looking for his head, but for young women that loved the comatose blonde. Haku closed her eyes and actually slept in her chair. Tayuya pulled her flute and played a soft tune, something from one of the books Naruto had gotten for her on one of their dates. It didn't have anything to do with battle, but in this moment, it was more magical and powerful than any of her chakra-powered attacks. Chapter 5. I want you to be aware, I'm not sure what we'll see, Inoichi explained. A linked mind walk into a comatose person. Tsunade nodded. Just do it. He might be... Listen to me, Yamanaka, you and I will be going in there. He's the most important person in the world to me and nearly every person here in the Hidden Sound Village, Tsunade said, glaring at the man. He not only is going to be the Nidaime Otokage, but he is more importantly my son. The room had been cleared of Tayuya and Haku, the latter taking the ice user to get some food and to clean up. Orochimaru was leaning against the wall by the door, his orders to Kidamaru and Gaara to keep everyone out until he said otherwise. I am not sure what the seal is doing to him, and if his mind is trapped by it as well as all I am saying, Inoichi said. We need to know, and I refuse to let someone as his mind unwatched, Tsunade said. Inoichi looked at the Otokage as if seeking help. Finding none, he finally nodded. He put a hand on her temple and along her face, and doing the same to Naruto's. My mind to your mind. Inoichi began gathering the chakra for the jutsu. Tsunade didn't get much time to make a smart-ass remark as she slumped in her chair. Orochimaru watched and waited, his arms crossed. XX. Mindscape. Tsunade looked around at the lush forest. This is Naruto's mind? She asked. It seems like it. I've never seen a mindscape like this before. Usually they are fortresses or sewers, even homes. Buildings of some kind, Tsunade said, and Inoichi nodded. Which way? Inoichi looked around as if searching. I'm not sure. This is unusual, the Mind Walker said, confused. Tsunade sighed, frustrated. It was then she heard it. It sounded like a laugh. This way, she said, and started running. Inoichi followed, muttering about how different the mind of the Jinchuriki was and how fascinating a study it would be. XX. They ran for what seemed like hours, and they entered a grotto where they saw a waterfall and a small lake. So green, Inoichi said, looking around at the vibrant landscape. He saw Tsunade staring and followed her eyes, his own widening at seeing Naruto curled up with a woman sporting 9 foxtails, pointy fur-tipped ears, and was very, very naked as she snuggled up against Naruto. He also noted she wore a collar with the kanji for seal on it like a dog tag. Both were sleeping. Naruto! Tsunade yelled, and she saw the boy leap to his feet, looking around wildly. Moem, he said, and ran towards her. The woman slowly got to her feet, a sigh escaping her. Naruto hugged Tsunade. I'm sorry, I can't wake up. I heard you and everyone and I tried, but whatever that bastard did. Tsunade hugged him tighter. He gasped. Are you okay? I mean, besides being stuck here? Tsunade asked after another minute of hugging. Yeah. Q-chan. What? Q-chan. Naruto gestured to the fox girl behind him, and Tsunade saw her. Why is she naked? Naruto blushed. So not my fault, he said. At a raised eyebrow from his mother, he motioned the girl closer. Explain to her, please, before I get pummeled. Q smiled as she walked, more like moved like a predator stalking smaller prey. This is your mother, Naruto, she said, and Naruto knew he was going to get a beating. Kyubi, Inoichi finally said, as if realizing something. The two blondes and the redhead looked at him with a DUH expression on each of their faces. Explain, Tsunade said. Naruto nodded and led them to a log by the lake with several rocks. Tsunade and Inoichi sat, and they watched as Kyubi sat and pulled Naruto into her lap and hugged him to her. As you know, Aeropop strengthened the seal, Naruto began. And Q-chan has been in a stasis sleep. Naruto looked at his mother. But wasn't Kyubi male? Naruto sighed. We all thought so, and with her in her fox form and throwing threats around, it was hard to tell as her voice was deep in that form. Q leaned her head on his shoulder, her slit eyes studying the first people she'd seen in a long time. So what happened? Inoichi asked. I'm getting to that. I was just laying the groundwork, Naruto said. As I said, Pop tightened the seal, and that sped up my taking of Q-chan's chakra. In doing that, it pulled her from the bloodlust she'd been in since she attacked Konoha. And why did she do that? Inoichi asked. The Uchiha, Naruto said. Explain. The Uchiha clan wanted power, as they always do. They managed to summon Q-chan from the spirit realm, stealing her away from her family. Q spoke up. I had just given birth and was scared for my children. I saw the Uchiha and the headbands they wore. They made demands of me, and when I refused, they threatened to kill my children. I killed them, but one escaped and I followed him to Konoha. I didn't make it to the city before I was attacked, and before I could speak, I found myself fighting and entering a bloodlust state. She looked ashamed. I was sealed in Naruto and slept. As I slept, I saw his life, and I woke when he was hit by that man. Tsunade knew the fox woman hated her confinement, but she seemed to hate Nada's more than even her at this time. That doesn't explain. Tsunade gestured. I woke in the seal and was as I am. Not a fox, not human. Q shrugged. I'm not sure if it was the seal Naruto's father did this, the one that Jiraiya added, or the one Nada's added. She sighed. But my time is short, this I know. Soon I will be gone and Naruto will have all my power and chakra at his command. Naruto squeezed one of the arms holding him. Tsunade sighed at the added complication. She went on to explain what had been happening and that Nada's would be contacting them soon. So the Uchihas are gone from the world and my revenge is hollow. Q said sadly. And the old bastards of Konoha's council are dead? Naruto asked his mother. Yes. Nada's turned the Uchi house into bombs, and the council was gathered, Inoichi said as he remembered the destruction around him. We have Kakashi Hatake, and his mind has been wiped, and he was given commands to be an assassination weapon to you and the Sandaime. Inoichi continued. Odokage Orochimaru has ordered his death, for safety reasons. His body is being incinerated and the ashes will be scattered to the winds. Naruto sighed. He didn't hate Kakashi really, the man just rubbed him the wrong way the few moments they interacted. So what else? He asked. Your girlfriends are driving the staff insane, and more than once I've chased them out of your room as they seem to be sleeping in here at night. Haku pulled out her comatose state, now that she's got a focus. Tsunade shook her head. I will not tell them about you snuggling up with a naked fox girl, for my sanity alone. Not to mention what the pervert would come up with for his books. Naruto blushed while Q made a snark sound of laughter. It's comfort, Q finally said. Narukun is making my last days comfortable. Days? Tsunade asked. Yes, in the next 7 days I will cease to be. The Shinigami will come for my soul and I will finally be removed from Naruto. And while he is here, I am sharing my stories with him. She smiled. Not to mention keeping him company until he is freed from whatever that man did to him. Tsunade noted that there was a closeness between the fox and her son, but she wouldn't say it. A dying being needed love and peace, and she would give the fox that. Inoichi had no such filter. So, you're having sex with the demon fox? Naruto sighed. It's not sex. He looked at his mother. Anything else outside of my head I should know? The genin of Konoha arrived a couple hours ago. I meant important, Naruto said. We miss you. I miss you too. You know all that speculation Shizen and I had about mental training. The only thing it does is give me something to do. All that crap we thought of training in one's mind is bullshit. Tsunade smirked. She'd heard the two arguing numerous times about what if they could have a patient train in their mind while in a coma. Inoichi looked at him. Shizen and Naruto have long speculated that a person in a coma could train their chakra and body, but I can say it's utter bullshit. It just keeps the mind busy. Tsunade shook her head. So you can hear us when we're talking to you? Naruto nodded. Yeah. He blushed. I don't want to know what your girls is saying while unchaperoned. Tsunade said she could figure out what the girls were whispering in his ear. She sighed. You can't pick just one, can you? Naruto looked down and shook his head. We'll talk about this later. But, at least I like each of them. Just and no more. Tsunade said, flicking him on the nose. Oh. M.O.M. Naruto said, putting his hands over his nose. We'll be back. This visit was to make sure you were all right. But you're in good hands. She shook her head at the perverted grin and giggle from Kyubi. Looking at Inoichi. How do we get out? Why? Oh, yes. He took her hand and cancelled the meld. Tsunade heard Kyubi ask Naruto. Now that the adults are gone, how about we continue that lesson in kissing? And mindscape. XX. That vixen. Tsunade roared, coming back into her body. Orochimaru looked at her with a raised eyebrow. What? She snapped. Messenger pigeon arrived. Kin found Jiraiya and they're entering the village above. Also Sarutobi-sensei has arrived. He and several families have abandoned Konoha, it seems. The Odokage said. And what about a vixen? He asked and widened his eyes, hearing Tsunade's knuckles pop as her fist clenched. Our little boy has been playing games in his mind while he's stuck there. Orochimaru quirked an eyebrow as Tsunade explained. Don't tell Jiraiya. He said when she was done. We both know what the pervert would do. And we can't tell the girl either. Tsunade said, not wanting to deal with the headache. Let's go greet the fool and the old man. Orochimaru said, offering his arm to Tsunade while Inoichi had already left during Tsunade's report, a thoughtful look on his face. Tsunade smiled. Always the gentleman. Tsunade said. Can't let the brat make me look bad, Orochimaru said, looking at the boy he and his teammates claimed as theirs. Chapter 6. Mindscape. Naruto fell back as Kyuubi tackled him after his mother left. She leaned over him, her slit eyes studying his face. I want to mate with you before I go, she said, her eyes meeting his. Can we talk about this? Naruto asked a bit nervously. What's to talk about, hot stuff? I like you, you think I'm hot. And when I'm gone you will have my power, and I will have a fond memory to carry me into the ever after. Naruto swallowed as the naked fox woman rubbed against him. I thought my first time would be with one of those little hussies chasing you like a dog in heat? Please! Why go for a girl, when a woman is what you need for your first time? Kyuubi said with a grin as she leaned down and before Naruto could protest kissed him, her tongue invading his mouth. Her tails were stimulating him and he realized that they were acting as hands. One of them was undoing his buckle, while another had his zipper down and was invading his pants. He got the clue she succeeded when he felt something furry and soft stroking his shaft and arousing him. His groan told her she was getting to him, and she used her claws to cut his shirt. She licked his chest and bit down on his nipple, getting a gasp from him. Her tails had his pants and boxers removed. Love me, worship me, Kyuubi said, her voice becoming soft, nearly a purr as she kissed her way towards his crotch, her warm mouth engulfing him, and Naruto's eyes rolled up into his head. Exit Mindscape. XX. So the fox is keeping him company? Shizen asked her mentor and friend. Surprisingly, Tsunade said. She didn't trust the kitsune woman. She'd seen the look of lust in her eyes. I wonder what he's thinking? Shizen pondered and Tsunade looked to see the blankets tenting. Damn kitsune, she muttered. What? Shizen looked down and her eyes widened. Oh my. Definitely keep the girls out, Tsunade muttered. She sighed. Is there something you needed? Yes, Kimimaro has asked for a release, despite my recommendations. Tsunade nodded. He hasn't given up despite your bedside manner. Shizen blinked then blushed. It's okay, Shizen. Just be careful with him. He will put everything behind his duty. The younger medic nodded. Orochimaru has asked me to have you meet him in the conference room. The Hokage is there and Jiraiya is looking grim. Tsunade sighed and kissed Naruto's forehead. Behave in there, brat. She whispered low and left the room, nodding at Kadamaru who was standing guard. Shizen parted from her mentor to go check on Kimimaro. Passing several rooms, Tsunade heard voices and entered the room at the end of the hall. Ah, Haim, Orochimaru said. Just in time. He looked at Jiraiya. Continue. The Toad Sannin had bags under his eyes indicating he hadn't slept in some time. As I said, I searched the library at Mtenya. It was several days in that I was visited by Natas. Jiraiya ran a hand over his face. The bastard gloated about removing the cure and the seal from the records. He also said he was done with Konoha. Sarutobi from his seat sighed. He is. He destroyed the council and many of the clans were poisoned. We discovered this after you'd left. So what's left? Tsunade asked. A couple of clan members from the ninja families. The Naros, Akamichis, Yamanakas, Aburame, only a couple of Hyuga are left, the Inuzukas. That and a handful of Jonin, Chunin and Umbu. Tsunade shook her head. It's like he has a grudge, but who is he? Jiraiya sighed. I might have a suggestion. Minato. The others looked at him. What? Hiruzen Sarutobi said, looking at his students to see the other two had grim looks as well. Other than Naruto, Minato was the only one to ever call me EroSannin. Natas has called me that several times. He looked at Orochimaru. And he's the only one that would know enough about Naruto's seal to make alterations. We need to plan. Natas will be in contact soon. I don't believe it's Minato. He gave up his soul to the Shinigami, Orochimaru said. We also need to find places for the Konoha refugees. He looked at Sarutobi. I won't allow them in this complex unescorted. I'm sorry, but all I care for is here. The third Hokage nodded. Understandable. Tsunade spoke. And if any of them have issues against Naruto, they better get walking now, because the villagers here love Naruto, and he will be the next leader of this village. Hiruzen nodded. I will make it very clear to them all. I want to thank you for taking us in. Orochimaru nodded. With the village quarantined, it's what we could do. Tsunade looked at her teammates. I have some information about Naruto since we're all together. She went on to explain what she'd learned with Inoichi. So, he's bored. Jiraiya said. Tsunade shook her head. No, the Kyuubi is entertaining him for now, but he wants out of this condition. Sunheim. We'll fix this. Jiraiya said. XX. Naruto's mindscape. Yes. Kyuubi threw her head back as Naruto's tongue worked her folds. After the blowjob she'd given him, she'd been flipped and found out that while it was his first time, the blonde had read Jiraiya's books and learned a lot from them as her third orgasm hit from just his fingers and tongue. Naruto kissed her inner thigh and grinned at her. You say something, Kyuheim? Kyuubi growled and using her tails flipped Naruto onto his back and pounced on him, her eyes flashing as she looked down at him as she straddled his chest. You think you can handle me? She asked, and the blonde grinned up at her. I think so, he said, and she moaned as his hands were massaging her ass, the spot where her tails grew from. He massaged in a way that was driving her over the edge. You don't want to play with that, she growled. Naruto smirked and then stroked the fur the other way, and Kyuubi growled before leaning down and kissing him, her body stretching out over his, her tails pinning his hands far out. Another tail had been stroking his erection. I'll make a man out of you. Kyuubi hissed into his mouth, and she raised herself up, and he nearly exploded right there as her warm folds engulfed him. Oh, Kami! He moaned, and Kyuubi, hovering over him, grinned. I'll take you to heaven, kiddo, she said, and began to grind her hips, rising up and down as she allowed her inner muscles to milk him with her, putting in a little movement. She saw his eyes roll up into his head as he was being overwhelmed. Those girls should thank me for breaking you in, Kyuubi said as she continued to squeeze him within her folds. Naruto made a gurgling sound and she laughed. By the time I'm done training you, you'll know how to make those girls melt and retain your brain while doing it. Exit Mindscape. XX. Haku's Saban needles hit the vital areas, followed by a hail of ice spikes to the same place. Nada's is a dead man, Tayuya said as she played a simple tune on her flute. It was basic music, not powered by chakra. Kin and Temari were sitting with her as they watched Haku vent. We're agreed then, the fan user said. When Lady Tsunade and the other go to meet Nada's, we go with. The two nodded. Kin was tying bells to her needles and looked up. Konoha nin, she growled. They turned to see several of the genin they'd met during the exam walking onto the training ground. What the fuck are they doing here? Tayuya hissed, putting her flute and music away and drawing the special dagger Naruto had gotten for her. It was a double-edged blade, the handle filled with holes, and she could use it in battle. She had left it behind when they went to Konoha. Haku, realizing there was someone new, stopped and looked on at the approaching group. She recognized them. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Shino Aburame, Choji Akamichi, Kiba Inuzuka, Hinata Hyuga, Rock Lee, and Tenten. This is a private training ground, Kin said when they were close enough. We're just looking around, Ino said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. Kin hated kunoichi like her that worried about her looks more than her training. Whatever, Barbie. Go find a hair salon to trade gossip with, Kin said. Ino glared at her. You can't tell us what to do. Wanna bet? You're not in Konoha anymore. Your parents ain't gonna bully anyone, and they sure as fuck don't get to say a fucking word about what goes on around here, Tayuya snarled. Shikamaru sighed as Ino continued to dig them into a hole. They might have numbers, but each of these kunoichi he'd classify as very dangerous. We don't want any trouble, he said, speaking up. Too late for that, Kin said. Says you. Kiba spoke up. Akamaru on his head barked. Shino and Choji stood back. Yeah, we have the right to explore. Ino said. No, you don't. They all turned to see Anko standing on a branch. You Konoha genin were told to remain in the section of town marked for you. She looked at the quartet. And you four need to go see Lady Tsunade. Kin and Taiya glowered at the Konoha group while Temari and Haku led them out. What crawled up their asses? Kiba said. He was sent several feet by Anko, who appeared in front of him and punched him. You have no right to come into our home and be insulting. Their boyfriend fought to save your home, even while being persecuted by your council, and now he's in a serious condition. Anko turned looking at the gathered genin. Get back to where you belong. She stepped away, but Kiba it seemed couldn't keep his mouth shut. You mean that blonde idiot that fought Niji? The killing intent that came from Anko had Kiba wet himself and Akamaru on his head to wet Kiba's head. That blonde idiot, as you call him, is my little brother. And he fought to save you all, while you gave up and went into hiding. Next time you say anything about Naruto, know I will slit your fucking throat and feed you to one of my snakes. She shoo-shined away. Way to go, Kiba, Ino said. What? You never know when to quit. The others kept their distance as the smell of urine became evident. Tenten was looking at the direction the Oto Kunoichi went. Tenten, we need to go. Niji should be getting his bandages changed, Lee said. She nodded and wondered about the group she'd just seen. And she wondered about her idol Tsunade even more as to why she would leave Konoha and form a new village and be so hostile to Konoha. Chapter 7. Mindscape. Naruto grinned as Kyubi snuggled into his side, her tails covering them like a blanket. You are something else. Kyubi actually giggled at his mumbled words. That's not what you were saying before. Naruto made a shrugging motion, but said nothing else. Listen to me, Kyubi said, sitting up. Naruto's eyes opened, and he saw her leaning over him, her bare breasts getting his undivided attention. Kyubi huffed, and used the tail to cover them. Up here, genius, she said. His eyes met hers. We need to talk about what will happen when I am gone. Exit Mindscape. XX. Orochimaru sat in the throne at the front of the room. Naruto had designed it as a joke, but it was from this room that Orochimaru sent his orders out from. Gathered were the ninja of Oto and the remaining Jonin, Chunin and Umbu of Konoha. The reason for this was with the rising sun, the messenger from Nata's had arrived. It was a surprise on who had been used. Tsunade had to be restrained at seeing the animated corpse of her former lover Dan. What's the matter, Haim? Don't you love me any more? Dan asked. You might be wearing his face, but Dan died. You aren't him. Go back to your master and tell him I will kill him for this and for what he's done to my son. Dan shook his head and looked at Orochimaru. I bring a message from my lord Nata's, and a gift. Deliver your message, ghoul, Orochimaru said, his fingers laced before his face. Dan nodded. Lord Nata's instructs you the Sannin to bring Naruto to the top of Mount Omashu. Just the Sannin? Jiraiya asked. Dan smirked. You got old Jiraiya. The scowl on the face of the Toad Sage indicated he wasn't impressed with the corpse. And no. You may bring who you wish. Lord Nata's knows there are many that care for Naruto. He looked at Orochimaru. Is that all? The snakes Sannin and Otokage asked. Dan held up a small chest about the size of a loaf of bread. He placed it on the floor and stepped back. My task is done, Dan said and looked at Tsunade. Live long Haim. Be happy, he said before his body dissolved to ash and drifted away. Jiraiya stepped forward and toed the chest with his foot. What are you doing? Tsunade asked. Praying it isn't a bomb, Jiraiya said, and then he snickered as everyone backed up. Shaking his head, he picked it up and opened it. Everyone sucked in their breath. Heh. He's been busy. On the velvet inside were 9 rings. Looks like he's taken out Akatsuki, Jiraiya said, picking up a ring. All those years of information gathering wasted, he muttered. Tsunade looked at the ring. You mean the Bija hunters? Jiraiya nodded. The ones I was going to train Gaara and Naruto to fight against after the shit with Konoha was done, Orochimaru cleared his throat. Store those somewhere safe. We need to make plans for traveling. The question is who's all going? Jiraiya muttered and was nearly blown off his feet by the shouted answers. XX. I am going. Sensei, be reasonable. Orochimaru said to the former Hokage of Konoha. We don't know what Nadas has planned, and… Listen to me, Orochimaru. I am an old man, but I can still take you to task. I am going. If for nothing more than to make sure that Naruto stays safe. Orochimaru sighed and looked at Tsunade. Who is all going? Besides the three of us? Anko, Kimimaro, Shizen, Haku, Temari-kin, Tayuya, Gaara, Hinata, Jirobo, Kidamaru, Sarutobi-sensei, Ryu, Yugao Yuzuki, Hana Inuzuka and Tsum Inuzuka. Orochimaru sighed. Is no one staying to watch the village? Kabuto. Tsunade said with a deadpan tone. Most of the Konoha people. Orochimaru sighed. We need someone to stay in charge. Tsunade sighed. And who will you have to cripple to do that? Everyone that's going cares about Naruto. Hell, Kabuto told Anko if he wasn't as messed up as he was, he'd insist on going. He nearly did anyways. Orochimaru sighed. Then Kabuto will be in charge. Sukan and Yukon will be his arms and legs and help him run the village until we return. Tsunade knew that the two members of his personal guard weren't going to be happy with Orochimaru going into danger. I'd order Kimimaro to remain, but him we'd have to kill in order for it to stick. He's obsessed that he failed and refuses to stay behind. Tsunade nodded. Shizen had been fighting an uphill battle keeping the leader of the Sound Five restricted to his bed. She stood. I'm going to prepare Naruto for travel. She looked at her former sensei. You get to explain to your people why you're going, and why they aren't coming along. Hiruzen sighed and watched her go. He turned to Orochimaru. Does she still treat you like a child that got caught with your hand in the cookie jar? All the time, old man. All the time. Orochimaru said, a rueful grin on his face. But me and Jiraiya wouldn't want it any other way. Hiruzen shook his head and went to tell his own people that he would be going. At least I'll have 3 others with me. He thought that should satisfy some of them. XX. Tsunade entered the room and stopped seeing Naruto's girls getting dressed. Many of them were putting on Anbu armor and were geared for war. Do I want to know why there are 4 nearly naked girls in the room with my comatose son? Haku looked the least guilty. We are discussing who will be Naruto-kun's first wife while we are preparing to kill the man who put him in this condition. Tsunade blinked and she sighed. You think there will be more than one wife? Haku nodded and the others seemed to let her bear the brunt of whatever anger Tsunade was going to unleash. Yes. We have agreed that we all love Naruto, and if it means we have to share him, we will. We know he loves each of us, and we refuse to cause him pain in choosing. Tsunade looked at Haku. Well, what if I say only one of you can be his wife? And you would cause him pain? Haku said back. Asking Naruto to choose only one is similar to asking him to breathe with one lung. You hate the thought of him being in any kind of pain. Tsunade's hand was clenched at her side. You. When Naruto-kun awakens, each of us will kiss him, and inform him of what we have decided. You will stay out of it, not because you agree, but because you love your son and want to see him happy. Tsunade looked at her and smiled. It took you long enough. The others blinked. What the fuck? Tayuya said in shock. Tsunade chuckled. I've been waiting for the 4 of you to get your heads out of the sand and stand up and make a decision. Temari sat down in her pants and bra. You've been playing us? Damn right I have. Tsunade said. I've known since the moment Naruto showed any interest in each of you. I saw the moment you each fell in love with my son and he with each of you, and all the times Anko or I interrupted was a test. If any of you had wavered at all, you would be kicked to the curb faster than Naruto eats ramen. She looked at the 4 girls. I thought him like this might have kicked you off, but it hasn't. When I'm not here, the nurses tell me how each of you sit with him, talking to him. She held up a hand. I don't want to know about what. But know this, there will be no sex until the wedding night. Am I clear? Yes, ma'am, all four answered. Tsunade nodded. Now, finish getting ready. We need to prepare Naruto for transport. And girls. They looked at her. Next time tuck the blanket back in after you've looked at the merchandise. Tsunade laughed as all four face faulted. Being a mother has its perks, she thought. XX. On the way to Mount Omashu. Why is Nada's dragging us all the way to one of the elemental mountains? Tsunade pondered as she walked next to the litter carrying her son. Jiraiya had been quiet as he walked. Around them the others were acting as guards. Orochimaru walked next to the horse that pulled the wheeled litter. Hiruzen rode the horse. It seems this is some grand plan of his. I think whatever the sorcerer, Shang, did before he died, he said, hesitating before speaking of the sorcerer he'd faced. Whatever he did, we didn't see a result then, Orochimaru said in agreement. Tsunade looked at her son and wondered what he was doing. You better behave in there, Naruto. She would swear he had a grin, but his face remained blank. Chapter 8. Base of Mt. Omashu. Tsunade looked at the stairs that had been carved into the mountain. Those weren't the last time we came through here. No, they weren't, yet they look like they've been there for a while anyways. Orochimaru agreed. Around Naruto's litter Haku, Kin, Taiya and Temari stood. Each looked at Naruto. He's grinning, Taiya said. He's not. He's in a coma, Temari said. You're paranoid, Kin said. I'm not fucking paranoid. He's got a glow about him, Taiya said and looked at Haku. Tell them. Haku was studying Naruto's features. Her eyes softened and she looked at Taiya. There is something, she admitted. See? Taiya hissed and held her head down when Tsunade looked back at them. I still say you're paranoid, Kin said, looking at Naruto. Temari looked at Haku and then moved closer and was staring at Naruto's face. I think they're right. Fuck yeah, Taiya said. What's going on over here? Tsunade demanded. All four jumped at her voice and looked at her. Haku spoke, her voice quiet. We were discussing Naruto-kun, she said. He seems to have a glow about him, she said. Tsunade was swearing in her head. She knew exactly what was going on, and she was cursing a perverted kitsune and her innocent baby being led down the path of the dark side. I swear I will castra. No, I'll make sure he's wearing a chastity belt and I'll swallow the key. I will protect his virtue. The fox might be mentally having her way with him, but... Tsunade's face had the four girls back up, wondering what she was thinking of that caused the grin along with the low-level killing intent. Tsunade shook her head and looked at the others. Gather around, she ordered, and everyone pulled closer. Jiraiya and Anko have gone to scout ahead. We'll have to alter the litter, it won't make it up the stairs as it is, Hiruzen said, looking on. He looked at the others. Volunteers? Jirobo and Ryu stepped up. We'll carry him, they each said. Now we need to wait. Everyone check your gear. We march when Jiraiya and Anko get back. Orochimaru smirked. Very forceful old man. Hush. You worry about your boy, the Hokage said. Keep it up and I'll give you my job, Orochimaru said. Oh hell no, Hiruzen said. I'm retired. Konoha's destroyed and I'm just a meddling old man. You've got that right. They both turned and went into their fighting stances, seeing Nada standing on a branch. You took your sweet time, Nada said from behind the skull mask. And I wouldn't do that if I were you. The area is littered with tags just waiting for a flashpoint. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. We're here. Not here. Up there, Nada said, pointing to the top. I'm surprised how few you brought with you. We brought enough, Orochimaru said. Nada's chuckled. Oh, I know that. The masked head turned towards Hiruzen. I am sorry to hear about the loss of Konoha, but how do you say it? Ah, the will of fire shall live on as long as there is a citizen left. Close, but then we're not here to talk about philosophy, Hiruzen said. Alas, we're not. Get to the top. Nada shimmered away as if he'd never been there, and perhaps he hadn't been. XX. On the mountain. Move your fat ass, Aeropop! Anko said, skipping up the stairs. Jiraiya huffed at the climb. They built stairs, why not a lift? He wheezed as he tried to get his breath. Lazy ass. Too much drinking and watching women, Anko said, motivating the white-haired older man behind her. Shut it, you, Jiraiya said as he continued to climb. Do these spiral around the mountain, or is it me? Anko nodded. They do, which is a good thing, it doesn't make them as steep. Jiraiya nodded. And the width, 5 people could walk comfortably side by side. The pair continued. You okay? Jiraiya asked. Fine. Liar. Anko sighed. Okay, I'm not fine, thanks for asking, Pop. But with my boyfriend nearly ripped to shreds, my brother in a coma, and a freak with more tricks than a snake oil salesman we saw at that trade bazaar when we were little. Jiraiya put a hand on her shoulder. Your boyfriend will be fine. He's going to make a full recovery. As for Naruto, we'll get the hyperactive little monkey up and I'll take you both to that place by the ocean. Anko smiled. We haven't gone there since Oto was founded, Anko said. The 6 of us have been busy. Hell, you can bring your boy along as well. Anko snorted. You know, if that happens, Naruto's little harem will have to come along as well. She paused, seeing the look on his face, and shook her head. Perverted old man. Jiraiya shrugged. I'm honest. Anko nodded at this. Looking over the edge of the stairs, she whistled. Long way down. Jiraiya looked up. Still long way to the top. He formed the seals and summoned a toad. Tell Tsunade that we're halfway up and it's clear thus far. Candy? The toad asked. Anko pulled out a box of Pocky. This is yours once the message is delivered. Deal! The toad hopped away rather quickly, leaving a smoke trail. Jiraiya smirked. You and Naruto spoil them, he accused. Yeah, but we get better results than you do with a bribe here and there. A pat, a kind word. Jiraiya sighed. Grab a stare. We'll wait for the others here, he said, and pulled out his pad and pen, his eyes unfocused as he began to write. Anko was always amazed watching the man who had been in her life since she was rescued 16 years ago. How he would detach his mind and his hands would free write. At moments like this, she always thought he came up with his best work. And now the wait, she said. XX. Kimimaro paced. In his hands was a pair of bone scimitars. He made them a year ago, and Naruto had, with help of Jiraiya, etched seals into hilt and grip for him, enhancing the already deadly weapons. Sit. He looked at Shizen. His eyes held a deadness. He was here too close, the bone user said. And he'll be closer later, but we need to conserve our strength. Kimimaro sighed. I keep failing. Shizen stepped in his path and put a hand on his forearm, forcing him to lower the bone blades. She looked up at him. Don't do this to yourself, she said. Kimimaro sheathed the blades across his back and looked at the brunette before him. It is fact. Fiction, Shizen said. Neither Lord Orochimaru or Lady Tsunade have laid any blame upon you, and you can bet that Naruto-kun will say that it wasn't your fault either once he wakes up. Kimimaro sighed. If I was doing my job properly, Naruto-sama wouldn't be in this condition. It was a battlefield. Everyone was separated, Shizen said. She was going to say more when Tsunade yelled. Saddle up! Shizen cursed her mentor's timing, but she put a hand on Kimimaro's arm and her look told him they weren't finished. XX. Nada's watched from the shadows as the group began the trek up the stairs, his masked eyes landing on the litter carrying the body of the comatose Naruto Uzumaki. Not much longer, Nada said. He turned towards the green tunic wearing ninja. Reptile, keep an eye on them, make sure nothing happens. Nada's turned towards the mountain. Your journey has begun with but a simple step. He turned towards the path and saw another figure emerge. Report. Oto has been taken. The shadowed form off Noob Saibot said in a hollow voice. The survivors are being driven to the location as you ordered. Nadas nodded. With the Sannin out of the way, Odo wouldn't last. Then looked at the shadow ninja. What of Kabuto? Saibot handed him the scroll. It has been taken care of as ordered. Good. Nadas shimmered away, Saibot vanished as well. A lone leaf fell from the tree, no one saw it hit the ground. Chapter 9. Ntiomashu. Anko looked on as the sun set. They were 3/4 of the way up the mountain, and were making camp on the stairs. The others had come up while they waited, and she watched the 3 people who raised her talk. She could tell her uncle was pissed about something and Mama Tsunade didn't look any happier. She headed over to where her little blonde brother was, and she remembered the day they'd left Konoha when he was a baby. She'd seen him grow into the fine young man who would give his life to protect those who were special to him. Her eyes drifted towards the 4 young women who Tsunade had currently making first aid packs. She'd caught them once again hovering over the blonde, and Anko knew from the blushes they weren't talking about the weather. My little brother's gonna get laid. It might kill Mom with the heart attack she'll have because I see each of them getting pregnant by him, she thought. Haku was the best at the current task, while Temari was decent, as long as she had an example to go by. Kin and Tayuya weren't, and the amount of swearing coming from Tayuya was any indication. Anko prayed no one needed the med kits she was making. XX. Shizen brought the cold food to Kimimaro, who was standing just beyond the firelight, his bone scimitars resting point down, his eyes scanning up the steps for any danger. You need to rest, she said as she handed him the plate of jerky bread and dried fruit. I am fine, he said. You're not. You are still recovering from a major injury, Shizen said. I'll stick you with a Senbon if you don't rest. Let some of the others guard for a while. He was silent as he chewed the dried apple and apricot slices. Why is it you are content with my failures? Shizen stepped in front of him, her eyes looking up into his. It's not your failures I care for. I care about you. At this the bone user blinked and looked at her. She put a finger to his lips. She smiled that he was finally starting to understand. XX. Mindscape. It's time. Naruto turned from the meditation exercise he was doing to see Kyubi was transparent. I thought we had a couple of days left, he said, standing, and stopped his hand from reaching out for her halfway up. She gave him a smile. While our time was short, and very pleasurable, it has come to the time when I must part from you. Kyubi smiled and her ghostly hand reached out, and he imagined it was caressing his cheek. I will always remember you, Naruto said sadly. I know. And I feel privileged to be remembered by one with so pure of heart. The Kitsune contract is yours and you may do as you wish. Remember all I showed you and you'll do fine. Naruto grinned. And your mates will love you. I still think Mom's going to shit a gold brick when I tell her that. Kyubi chuckled. She'll be loud about it, but in the end when you swamp her with grandchildren, she'll forget all about her protests of you having more than one girl. The ghostly hand traced his whisker marks. Have a long, full life, Naruto. Name a kid after me if you can get away with it. Naruto felt a tear slip from his eye as the ghostly form of Kyubi faded away. XX. Real world. What's up? Kin asked. Haku was hovering and turned to look at the other 3. He's crying. They all looked to see tears slipping down Naruto's unconscious face. Tayuya's hand hovered. What the fuck does that mean? Haku looked at her. I don't know. XX. Damn it, Tsunade, we need a plan, Jiraiya said. Thus far Nada's has been 3 steps ahead and I for one am sick of dancing to his tune and being led around by the nose. The baka is right, Heim, Orochimaru said. Nada's has been the one pulling the strings. I still remember how easily he trapped us when Naruto was young. How he took you down easily. He got lucky, Tsunade said, crossing her arms over her chest. Jiraiya sighed. I still think it's Minato, but Nada's isn't fighting like him, which is confusing. But his skill was seal and jutsus. Minato is dead. His soul was taken by the Shinigami. There's no coming back from that. She looked at Orochimaru. Even with that jutsu you accidentally created. And no one's seen it but the two of you and the kids. I destroyed all the notes and the scroll. He looked at Jiraiya. You were there for that. The Toad Sannin nodded. He showed it to me as he burned it, and we didn't take our eyes off it, and then scattered the ashes. Tsunade looked to where the girls were watching over Naruto. I don't like the fact that Nada's knows so much about Naruto either. We've got a good group here, Jiraiya said, cutting her thought off before it began. All of them are loyal to Naruto. Tsunade nodded. I know. I'm just getting frustrated. We'll reach the top after midday tomorrow. Get some rest. Orochimaru told his fellow Sannin. We end this, Tsunade said. I will not let Naruto's life be one of him having to look over his shoulder for his man. Jiraiya and Orochimaru watched her go. You ready to whatever it takes tomorrow, Dobe? Orochimaru asked in a low voice. You and I take out Nada's, no matter what, that bastard dies, no matter the cost. Orochimaru nodded and watched his teammate and friend walk back to the fire. He looked up the mountain. You die Nada's, and whatever dark desires you have for our boy will not happen. Orochimaru's snake-like eyes focused on the top of the mountain. Tomorrow. XX. Lord Hokage. Hiruzen turned to see Hana and Sim approaching. Yes? The scent trail you had us follow keeps vanishing and reappearing every 100 feet. Hiruzen nodded and stroked his beard. Rest. We'll be at the top tomorrow and we'll all need to be fresh. Hana left, but Sim remained. Is there more? Messenger bird. The Hokage of the destroyed Leaf Village took it and read it. Oh no. He looked at Sim. Gather everyone. Hiruzen found his former student looking up the mountain. There's been an incident. He showed the letter to Orochimaru, whose already pale complexion paled further. Shit! What? Jiraiya and Tsunade came up seeing their mentor with Orochimaru. He showed them the message. How? Tsunade asked. Apparently he had forces in wait until we left. Orochimaru said, crushing the message. Some survivors. Kabuto is unconscious, and the genin of Konoha made it out, but with minor injuries. Orochimaru said. Tsunade took the message and scanned it. You know Izumo? She asked the Hokage. Yes. He and his partner are basically lifetime Chunin. Tsunade looked at Orochimaru. He's fucking with us still. He wants us to either ignore it and keep going, or he wants us to turn around and see to our people. Bastard. Tsunade yelled to the top of the mountain. So what do we do? Jiraiya asked. We have people injured and heading into more danger. I am not leaving Naruto. Tsunade said. I'm sorry, but this time my son comes first over everyone else. Tsunade said, turning away. Orochimaru put a hand on her shoulder. We agree on this time. He then looked at the Hokage. We'll need to break the group down. The Hokage sighed. I am staying with you till the end. Besides, my old bones can't travel that distance in the short amount of time needed. The Sannin exchanged looks. Shizen will lead them, Tsunade said finally. Orochimaru thought about it. She can take Jirobo and Kidamaru. The girls aren't going, and neither will Gaara, so that leaves out Hinata. Jiraiya said in thought, knowing the girls wouldn't leave Naruto now for any reason. Ryu will go as well. He's got basic field medic training to complement his taijutsu abilities. Tsunade said. The Hokage sighed. Yugao, Hana and Sim will go along as well. The unspoken, so the Konoha group knows who to trust, hung in the air. I'll tell the group to make preparations, Orochimaru said. The Sannin took a step and then looked over his shoulder at the top of the mountain. There will be reckoning for this Natas. Our boy and now our village. You will pay. Chapter 10. Ntiomashu. Anko tossed the kunai up and down. She looked over her shoulder to see the others coming up the stairs. Kin and Taiyuya were carrying the stretcher. Kimimaro was just behind them, his eyes looking for danger. He's gotten strange after Shizen left, Anko thought. When her uncle told them what happened to Oto, she felt her gut clench, and after he gave the new assignments, he pulled her aside. Flashback. Anko! Save it! She said. There is nothing I can do for the survivors, and I am not leaving my brother. Kabuto is alive still, Orochimaru told her. I heard you. But my brother needs me more than my potential honey. I won't abandon my brother for anyone. Orochimaru nodded. End flashback. I'm sorry, Kabuto. But Naruto is my brother, she thought as Jiraiya caught up to her. Almost there, he said with a grin. Send a toad ahead, she said, and the toad sage, recognizing her mood, didn't argue and sent a toad to scout ahead. Anko looked at the 4 girls around her brother, and suddenly she got a chill. Cammy, please let them all make it, she thought. It was the same chill she got on that night when the QB came and she lost her birth parents. It was the same chill she got on that day when those bastards tried to rape her and Naruto protected her. It was the same chill she got on the day of the finals of the Chunin exam. She prayed that the chill wasn't foreshadowing more trouble. XX. Nadas looked down. They are nearly here. He looked over his shoulder. General, prepare the welcoming reception. The Skull Knight slammed a gauntlet-covered fist to an armor-covered chest and turned to do as ordered. Oto and Konoha, your fates and destinies are wrapped in one single thread. I did what I did to ensure. Nadas left it hanging and walked away from the ledge. XX. It will be better soon, Naruto-kun, Haku said, walking on the left of the stretcher. Temari on the right looked at her, but it was Taiuya who spoke up. Fucking right it will be. We'll kick Bonehead's ass and show him that he does not fuck with our man. Kin, bringing up the rear of the stretcher, shook her head. We do need to be reasonable. Nadas has gone toe-to-toe with the Sannin and Naruto. We're not going to fucking play nice, Taiuya said. I aim to cheat to win. And so will Nadas, Haku said. He's been pulling string for some time, if what I heard Lady Tsunade and the others talking about. Well, we'll just have to cut them, Temari said. Her huge battle fan was strapped to her back, and strapped to the inside of her forearms were 2 smaller bladed fans. She'd learned there were battles that needed in close fighting and learned from the scrolls Naruto and his family had given her after she was sent to them from Suna. Ahead they saw the Sannin stop. This can't be good, Kin muttered. It's not, Anko said, stepping back. There are black-robed guards with strange lances lining the stairs, and one is standing in the middle of the path. Then we fucking bowl them over the edge, Taiuya snarled. We need to get to the top, Anko agreed with the redhead. Nadas has another hoop for us to leap through. Fantastic. Remind me to thank him when I see him. Anko thought her head tightening around the handle of the kunai. XX. Tsunade's fist clenched. More games, she snarled, seeing the path blocked. He never said he would make it easy, Jiraiya said. They were nearly to the top. Another 20 stairs and they would have made it. Gaara stepped forward with Hinata. Roadblock, he said in his cold tone. She put a hand on his forearm. Lady Tsunade, allow us to deal with this, she said. The young Hyuga had changed a lot since the Chunin exam. Her betrothal to Gaara had given her confidence as she got to know him more. The gourd on Gaara's back opened and a stream of sand flew out. The robed knights blocking the way didn't react, and Gaara stepped before the Sannin. Move or die, he intoned, placing a hand on the mountainside. The one standing in the middle of the stairs shook the helm-covered head. My orders are to allow none to pass. Bastards, came from Taiuya by Naruto. We are to take the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and destroy the rest, the general said. Gaara tilted his head to the side. You know what I am then? Gaara, the container of the one-tailed demon, the general said. That, but more importantly, I'm bored now. The sand lashed out, and to the shock of the knights the mountain wall exploded out, as well raining sand on them. The general lurched forward to attack Gaara as he was focusing on burying his troops, but the knight found his path blocked by the Byakugan blazing eyes and Hinata in a perfect gentle fist stance. You shall not pass, she said, and only his armor saved him from the initial strikes, but he felt the metal crack under the assault as she drove him back. He saw that his troops were entombed in sand and he could only watch as Gaara made a fist. Mass sand burial! The sound of a dozen knights being pulped weakened his resolve. What are these ninja? Lord Nada's warned me they were like no other warrior I've faced before. He thought as his breastplate shattered under Hinata's attack. 2 of them took me and my knights without even trying. His last thought was to curse Nada's as Hinata's strike hit his neck and death claimed him. Jiraiya let out a whistle as the young pair showed their skill. Gaara's sand returned and he used the sand he converted from the mountain rock to clear the path and send the remains over the side to the ground far below. Gaara turned and gave a grin even as Hinata slipped under his arm and gave him a one-armed hug. The young couple were a powerful pairing and Jiraiya could see what Naruto was thinking. His eyes went to the unconscious blonde and knew that Naruto had a powerful pair of friends there that would follow him and make whatever village he led even more powerful. This thought solidified Jiraiya's decision to do whatever needed to be done to put Nada's in his place and wake the boy he and the other Sannin thought of as their child. Our son. XX. They reached the top of the mountain and stopped after passing through the stone arch. There was a circle of stone pillars and in the middle was a stone slab. Nada stood behind it, and with him 11 other people. Kimimaro clenched his hands around the grips of his bone sword, seeing Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Behind them arrayed loosely was Kano, Reptile, Smoke Kitana, her loyal bodyguard Sonia, the monster-summoned monster Goro, Syrax, Frost and Jade. How nice, visitors! Nada said in a mocking tone. And I have no snacks prepared. Cut the shit. You said if we brought Naruto you'd take that seal off him. Tsunade said. Nada's put a hand to his chest. Did I say that? I don't recall. I know I was planning on taking the Kyuubi. They saw the skull mask tilt to the side. No! He stepped around the stone altar, and they would swear he was upset. How? What did you do to her? He demanded. To who? Tsunade asked. She had a sneaking suspicion what and who Nada's was talking about. The Kyuubi! It should have been days before. The skull mask looked at the Sannin. You didn't realize she passed. I guessed. Tsunade said. She said her time was nearly up. How did you talk to her? The seals should have isolated Naruto and her minds. I had the help of a Yamanaka mind walker. Tsunade said. Nada seemed surprised by this. You trusted. Nada seemed to shake himself. Then our business is done. Kill them all. He ordered his troops. That's what I'm talking about, mate. Kano said, pulling 2 wicked-looking knives. He smirked at Temari. Hello, love. You still owe me a scream. Kimimaro moved to face Scorpion, his bone scimitars twitching, ready for blood. Haku found herself one-on-one with Sub-Zero, while Anko was facing Kitana and her bodyguard Sonia. Nothing personal, Kitana said, pulling out her bladed fans. But Lord Nada's wants you all dead now. Nothing personal as I kick your asses, Anko said, pulling out the trench knives from her back sheath. She'd prepared for battle, and this was just the start. Gaara and Hinata were facing off against the staff-wielding Jade and Frost, who created a pair of ice daggers. Gaara had sand swirling about him as Hinata gave him a quick kiss, then took up her gentle fist stance, her eyes showing that she had the Byakugan activated. Smoke stood facing Kin and Tayuya. Yeah, we're going to fuck you up big time, loser, the flute user said, and Kin pulled out several saman with bells. Let's dance. To the shock of both girls, smoke seemed to shimmer then split as the shadow ninja noob Saibot formed and drew a wicked-looking sword from his back. 2 or 10, it won't matter, dickless. You're all going down. Tayuya snarled as she began to use her flute. Hiruzen Sarutobi felt the ground shake and he leapt aside just as Goro's fists impacted where he'd been a moment before. He's different than before, the former Hokage thought as he shed his robes, leaving him in his battle armor. Rawr! Goro let out another yell and leapt. The 4-armed monster was a power to be certain, and the former Hokage knew that he would need to be careful this go-around as he doubted the same thing would work again. Tsunade knelt by Naruto's stretcher while Orochimaru and Jiraiya stood facing Nada's and one of his freaks. "Syrax, take the Toad Sage," Nada's ordered and looked at Orochimaru. "We meet in combat, and you won't be leaving here alive, Snake Sannin. It is you who won't be leaving here, Nada's. I will defeat you and you will remove that seal from Naruto before I kill you," Orochimaru said, summoning Grass Cutter even as Nada's drew a blade and smirked. "The Raijin," Tsunade said. "How did you get that blade?" Nada's laughed. "The thief who stole it from Konoha told me I would have to take it from his cold dead hands, so I did." Nada's looked at Orochimaru. "Your death will be quick, Hebe team." Tsunade could only watch as her friends and family fought while she protected Naruto. Her eyes taking each battle, and she knew any of them could end in the blink of an eye. "Hold on, Naruto. We're nearly there." She thought, her eyes moving to the altar, and she knew her son would have to be placed on it. Just not until Nada's is unconscious and soon after that, dead. Tsunade. Chapter 11. Miles from Entiomashu. Shizen and the rescue team had no trouble finding the survivors of Oto. The genin from Konoha had done a decent job setting up a camp and forming watches. Hana and Sim vouched that Oto-nin with them were on their side, and Shizen started to check on the wounded. She saw Kabuto was set back once more. "What happened in Oto?" she asked. Bunch of ninja wearing blue, orange, green and black outfits showed up. They used ice attacks while others used fire. They seemed to come out of nowhere and attacked faster than anyone thought possible, Shikamaru said as he watched the medic tend the wounded. "One of them injected something in him before anyone could do anything." Ino was crying. Her father had been killed. "They killed Hatake. Actually, one of them wearing orange incinerated him in his cell," Shikamaru said. His own father was amongst the wounded. Shizen shook her head as she looked at the list of dead. "Oto was our home and that bastard waltzed in and killed them. Jirobo set up an area for me to work." She called to one of the Oto 5. "Ryu, get us some hot water to sterilize bandages and equipment. Corral some of the Konoha genin to help you." "Yes, Lady Shizen," the taijutsu fighter said as he rushed to do his task. She looked at the Konoha chunin and jonin that had survived with the Oto-nin and civilians. "Anyone with medical training scrub up, we have a lot of work to do. I pray to Kami that Lady Tsunade and the others come out of this all right." XX. Entiomashu. The top of the mountain had become a war zone. Tsunade kicked anyone that came close to Naruto, and it was thankfully only Nada's people as their own managed to keep dragging their battles away from the unconscious Naruto. Tsunade tried to keep an eye on all the battles at once. She was concerned for her former sensei as he was battling the four-armed monster. He's surprisingly spry for such an old guy that has been behind the desk for over a decade. Tsunade thought as she watched Hiruzen Sarutobi leap over the right foot monster, grab its shoulders and perform a shoulder throw. She watched as the monster Goro hit one of the pillars, destroying it, and she saw her former sensei shift his shoulders. He shouldn't be here. She thought as age was the one opponent Hiruzen couldn't beat, and it was going to make the difference here. XX. Kimimaro dodged the strange spear and lion scorpion hurled at him. He brought his bone scimitars down on the line, severing it from the spearhead. The line retracted into the orange and black wearing ninja. Kimimaro spun his blades and looked at Scorpion. "You will die here today." Scorpion's milky white eyes glared at him. "Already dead, you will join my army," Scorpion said in that hollow voice. "Not today," Kimimaro said as he moved in, his blade already in motion. Scorpion pulled a broadsword and he too met in a dance of death as bone blades clashed with the steel one. XX. Temari back flipped away from the knife-wielding Kano. "Ah, pretty, it won't hurt for long. You give me a scream and I'll end you right quick." Temari used her big battle fan and leapt into the air. She hovered in the air and pulled the smaller blade fans and took up her stance once she landed and got some distance between her and Kano. "Ah, come on, love, you think you don't like us. Here's your first clue." Temari said as she began to use her fans to make a wind attack. Kano leapt high and Temari was waiting and altered the jutsu to attack him. Kano came down in the middle of a small tornado, and it ripped him to shreds. Loser! Temari said as she went to reclaim her large fan. XX. Haku and Sub-Zero were at a standoff. You are quite skilled, young one, Sub-Zero said. I've had to learn on my own as there were no other ice users, Haku said. Join my clan. We can teach you much. Haku shook her head. Sorry, but my clan is Naruto-kun. I will not abandon him for anyone or anything. You could be the strongest Hayaton ninja in the world, Sub-Zero said. I could, but I believe being wife and mother would be even greater, and the only man that will be my husband is Naruto-kun. In order for that to happen, you must die. Sub-Zero chuckled as Haku created her ice dome, and he found himself looking at mirrors. This will be your end, Haku said as she stepped into a mirror. Dozens of Hakus appeared and Sub-Zero nodded his head. Impressive. Most impressive, he said as he began to dodge ice Saman. He would send ice spikes at mirrors only to see them return out another mirror to attack him. He even had to use an ice clone to avoid the attacks. Sub-Zero, if he wasn't sworn to the service of Nada's, would be impressed, and do all he could to see that this girl achieved her dreams. XX. Enko used the snake hand jutsu to separate Sonia and Kitana. She then used a summoning jutsu to summon several snakes to attack Sonia, while she attacked Kitana. You're the cheap tart that tried to seduce my little brother, Kitana smirked. He's cute and powerful. His children could rule worlds. Sorry, but you are not on the approved list. He's got 4 girls no more. Snake hand jutsu met Kitana's bladed fan, decapitating the serpents. Enko launched a volley of kunai and rushed the masked princess. This wasn't going to be an easy fight as she saw Sonia using katan jutsus to remove the summoned snakes. XX. Gaara and Hinata were too much for Frost and Jade. The two women were nowhere near the level of skill or power needed to stop Gaara alone, and with Hinata they were soon put down. The young couple stood over the destroyed servants of Nada's. Gaara-kun, I shall help Enko, he said. Hinata kissed her fingertips and touched his lips. Hinata! Temari joined them. Your battle anticlimactic as well? Hinata nodded. They heard a roar and saw the Hokage was having trouble with the 4-armed monster. Gaara-kun, you aid the Hokage. Temari and I will go and help Enko, Hinata said. The fan user snorted. If she'll let us. You have to admit she does get involved, Hinata supplied. Sure, let's go with that, Temari said, pulling her smaller fans while her big battle fans was strapped to her back. Just hope she doesn't attack us with those snakes, Temari muttered, jogging away with Hinata. Gaara looked to where the Hokage was and vanished in a sand shunshin. XX. Jiraiya avoided the chakra nets and cursed as Nada's freak maneuvered him away from the battle further. He's driving me, the Toad Sage thought. Syrax was being difficult. He was keeping Jiraiya moving and not giving him time to settle in position for any of his own jutsus. If I could just get in position, I could swallow the little shit in the toad mouth or swamp jutsu. Jiraiya thought at how quickly the freak was at launching those nets. Cybernetics? Where did Nadas find this tech? It's ancient tech, Jiraiya thought as he got a better look at Syrax. None of this is making sense, Jiraiya cursed as he was flipping around. My old bones can't take this. XX. Kin and Tayuya found battling Noob and Smoke was difficult. Noob seemed to be made of pure shadow. Smoke lived up to his name as his body seemed to be made of smoke. Kin's needles passed through Smoke's body. Tayuya's flute was beginning the battle tunes that Naruto had gotten for her, and Kin was acting as her guardian. Her senbons were her first line of defense. Her other weapon, a curved knife, was in her hand. Maybe when we get out of this, I'll take Naruto-kun up on his offer to get me sword training. Kin thought as Smoke and Noob were avoiding her senbon. She shook her head as they avoided them all, apparently not caring about the bells. Tayuya began the dance of the fireflies. And Kin had to admit the offensive music that Naruto had dug up and traded for added to Taiya's offensive capabilities. She was deadly with her genjutsus and summons, but actual attack music. Little motes of fire began to form in the air and started to move about like fireflies and surrounded the pair. Kin turned to look at Taiya, whose fingers danced over the flute's holes, and she knew that her friend was surrendering to the music. She'd seen her do that before. That means I'm all that stands between her and harm until her music spell takes hold. Kin launched more Saban at the freak ninjas, determined to help her out as long as possible. XX. Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't know how much longer he could hold out against the monster Goro. It was taking every trick he had to avoid Goro's flailing arms, and his jutsu that he had time for just rolled off the 8-foot monster's lizard-like hide. Hiruzen used Goro as a springboard and leapt into the air. While airborne, his hands flew through the seals and he finished as he landed, and the ground beneath Goro turned to mud and the beast man sank to its knees. His breath of relief was cut short as Goro leapt from the mud trap and backhanded him. Hiruzen expected to hit a pillar, and closed his eyes expecting its bones to shatter. He instead hit a pillow. Opening his, he saw it wasn't a pillow exactly, it was a ton of sand that had caught him. He looked over to see Gaara standing there. "Monster," Gaara intoned. "Your battle is with me now. I am Gaara Sabuku and you shall die by my hand." Goro let out a roar and charged. Gaara waited, his arms crossed, but the sand around him began to swirl in anticipation. XX. Orochimaru blocked each swipe, but even now his arms were getting numb as Nada's used the Raijin to its fullest potential. While he knew how to use his own blade, Orochimaru knew he wasn't a swords master by any stretch of the word, but he wasn't going to lose to this man who had already taken so much. He avoided a swipe and lashed out with a kick. Nada's took it and grabbed his leg, pinning it to his side. Well. Wonder what happens to a snake when it's hit by lightning? He held the Raijin against Orochimaru's knee and smirked as the Sannin screamed as he was being electrocuted. "You, and the others with you will die," Nada said. He missed the fist coming at his skull mask, and when it connected it sent him flying. Nada slid until he hit the stone altar. Shaking his skull mask, he saw Tsunade standing there with her fist where his head had been. "You ass," she hissed. "You stand between me and my child. Now you're going to tell me how to undo that seal, and I'll break every bone in your body, or you don't and I'll break every bone in your body." Nada stood slowly, his hand on the stone altar using it as support. "Don't you mean to tell you or you'll break my bones?" "No. I meant what I said. Tell me and I'll break your bones, don't tell me and I'll not only break your bones, but I'll do worse." Nada's held up the Raijin. "Come then, last of the Senju clan. Taste the blade of your ancestors." Tsunade snarled and charged. Chapter 12. Ntiomashu. The battle wasn't something pretty. It was a knockdown, drag-out, no-holds-barred fight, and everyone knew that to lose would mean no second chance. All around the mountaintop, fights were becoming brutal as jutsus that didn't even have a name flew. All this over the young man who was unconscious during it all, as Naruto Uzumaki lay on the ground protected by a woman he called mother. The face of the battle was about to change not only the world, but all he held dear. XX. Orochimaru dodged as Nada's sword bit into the dirt and rock. The snake Sannin saw it turning black and made the mental vow not to get touched by the evil blade. "What's the matter, Oroki-chan? I thought you wanted to fight me." Nada's taunted from behind his skull mask. "Oh, I want to fight you. But I want Naruto freed before I kill you." Nada's laughed. It reminded Orochimaru of a jackal he'd heard long ago. He used grass cutter to block the sword Nada's used and lashed out with a kick, only to find his strike blocked by Nada's. "Not that easy, Oroki-chan," Nada's teased. The snake Sannin growled in frustration. XX. Prior to Gaara's arrival last chapter, Hiruzen leapt over Goro once again. The four-armed monster came in again. The former Hokage of the now destroyed Leaf Village cursed as the monster prevented him from using jutsu, as he just kept coming and not giving the old man a chance to gather his chakra. Once more he landed and leapt. the fists of Goro turning the ground to gravel with the missed blows. Hiruzen Sarutobi used the monster's back as a springboard, and a chakra-enhanced leap took him even higher, finally buying him the much-needed time as his hands were a blur of motion. "Kuchio-sen no jutsu," the man known as the Professor said as he summoned aid to deal with the monster. Two big apes appeared and looked at the old man. "Stall him," he said to Kane and Taka. They nodded, and as he landed he watched the three big bruisers collide with the force of a freight train. He took a moment to catch his breath before he started using hand seals. Next he summoned Enma, and the Monkey King was ready to aid him as he transformed into his battle staff. Hiruzen watched as Goro slowly overpowered the brothers, and he struck when the scaled monster slammed Kane to the ground with a choke slam. "Let's rumble," Hiruzen said as he connected Enma's staff form to Goro's jaw with an upward swing, taking the monster off his feet. Goro got to his feet and spat out a fawn. "You will die, puny human!" The monster snarled, and to the disbelief of Hiruzen started forming hand seals with its strange hands. All four going through motions, and moments later Goro summoned another creature. This one had the body of a horse, the head and torso of a man, and ram-like horns on his head. "Deal with the monkeys," Goro ordered the creature, which gave Taka and Kane a very evil sneer before charging. Both the centaur and Goro, however, were stopped in mid-move as their bodies were wrapped in sand. Hiruzen looked up and saw the raccoon-marked eyes of Gaara. "Lord Hokage," Gaara intoned in that flat voice he used around everyone except Naruto, Hinata, Temari, and the Sannin. "Mind if I play through?" Hiruzen was feeling his age and nodded. "Please do, young Gaara. It is greatly appreciated." Gaara looked at the two monsters and raised his hand. "You are preventing the awakening of my friend." He closed his fist. "Sand burial," he intoned in that eerie dead voice, and the centaur exploded in blood and smoke, and Hiruzen wondered for the first time if a summon would return to its world dead if killed here, or would it simply vanish. Goro, however, roared and struggled again, and sweat formed on Gaara's brow as the creature was actually fighting the sand. Hiruzen stepped forward and smacked Goro in the face with the end of Enma. That was all it took to break the creature's concentration as the sand engulfed him, and soon it was raining blood. The third Hokage looked down and sighed. "Now that was messy." Gaara shrugged as he had used sand from his gourd to form an overhang that prevented him from being covered. Hiruzen and the two summons weren't so lucky, and the Hokage got drenched as he'd been right there when Goro became no more. XX. Enko kicked Sonia and back flipped away to avoid the bladed fans of Kidana. The princess and her guard were wearing Enko down, and she was on the defense now that the blonde woman had destroyed the summoned snakes Enko had created to keep her busy. Sonia spat a fireball at Enko, and before it hit, it was blocked by a very familiar battle fan. "Hey girl," Enko said, panting. "What kept you?" Temari stood there with her fan open all the way. "Oh, you know. Had to take in the sights. Say hello, Hinata." Sonia found herself on the ground as Hinata appeared behind her with a shunshin and connected with a Juken strike that severed Sonia's spine. "Hello, Hinata," Gaara's betrothed said in a tone of voice that reminded Enko of Gaara. "Your brother's been rubbing off on her, or is he rubbing something else?" Enko said, wagging her eyebrows. "Hentai," Temari said before looking at Kidana. "Surrender now and you'll live. Don't, and you and Blondie there will be new to the world of quadriplegics, and I'll make sure you're left somewhere with lots of dirty horny men." Kidana looked at her bodyguard who was moaning on the ground, then at the Hyuga, and then the other fan wielder, and the snake summoner. She snapped her fans open. "Death before dishonor," she said, and spun her fans. The chakra exploded from the end and would have hit Hinata, but her Byakugan had already seen the chakra forming, and she avoided it. All three women surrounded Katana and took up their respective stances ready to attack Kidana. The face of the battle had changed. XX. Jiraiya had finally reached his limit and threw a small boulder the size of his head into the net, and his hands created seals. 10 mud clones rose up and attacked Syrax, and the toad summoner used that time to summon a mid-level toad. Jiraiya stood on its back. "Gimme some oil," he said, and the toad complied, spitting a wad at Syrax. The mud clones kept the freak boxed in, and Jiraiya finished the jutsu and spat a fireball and watched as Syrax was destroyed. Loser, the Sannin said. He for one was sick of the freaks that Natas had at his command. When they had surprise on their side it was one thing, but in a straight-up fight. He looked around seeing the others winning their fights. He went to check on Naruto and see Tsunade uppercut a robed figure into low orbit. Hey Haim, he said, and she turned, her arm cocked, and she relaxed seeing Jiraiya. Done playing? She asked. Yeah. How is he? Tsunade looked down. No change in Naruto's status, but Orochi is having trouble with Natas. Both Sannin saw the sword fight and knew that their fellow Sannin was not a master with the blade. He was competent to give anyone trouble. The pair exchanged a look and they decided who would go to Orochimaru's aid the same way they always did when they didn't have time for cards. Rock, paper, scissors! They intoned, pumping their hands in the air. XX. The ice attacks met in the air and Haku vanished in her mirror as Sub-Zero melted into a puddle. Their attack had moved around the field until Haku created her ice dome, and she moved from mirror to mirror while Sub-Zero used ice clones to avoid her attacks. He reappeared and leapt away seconds before an ice knife would have taken his head off. Haku leapt to a fresh mirror, even as Sub-Zero sent an ice ball at the mirror she'd been in. The ice users respected one another, but Haku had to win. Naruto-kun is depending on me. She thought as her and the deadly assassin kept up their dance of death. Sooner or later one of them would get lucky. XX. Kimimaro and Scorpion continued their deadly dance, neither one caring about the cuts. They were trying to kill one another. It would take all they had to do it. Kimimaro was intent to destroy the being that he held responsible for his not being there for Naruto, and Scorpion was totally loyal to Natas and would see the last of the Kagaya dead, his soul given to his master. Their fight had moved to where it was now part of the fight between Kin/Taiya and Smoke/Noob Saibot fight. So Scorpion was a bit surprised when Taiya finished her tune, and he along with Noob and Smoke were engulfed in flames. Kin had managed to tackle Kimimaro away. Kin atop of the last Kagaya looked over at her friend. Damn, remind me not to have you play at mine and Naruto-kun's wedding. Taiya's only response was to raise her middle finger. XX. Natas felt his slaves fall one after another and cursed even as he drove Orochimaru back. He knew that he had to pull his next play and quickly. It was his only choice now. Tsunade came in and sent him flying back with one of her hammer blows. He felt his mask crack a bit. Time! Which surprised him as it worked, and the Sannin paused. I call for Mortal Kombat! What the fuck are you talking about? Tsunade demanded. The sky overhead darkened and lightning flashed several times before a voice from the heavens echoed. Choose your destiny! Nada smirked and his hand was raising. He was intent to pick the weakest person there. Fight me! All heads snapped around and eyes widened as Naruto was floating in the air. Energy crackled around him. His chakra swirled and he looked at Natas. Or are you a pussy? Tsunade looked at her son. How? She asked in a low voice. It was the same question Natas had, but he already had a suspicion about it. Come on, bonehead. You and me, Naruto said as he slowly touched the ground. Where he did it became filled with life as grass and flowers sprang up. 4 young women were fighting themselves about jumping him and never letting him go. A young woman he called sister smiled as a tear slipped from her eyes. The last of Haguya gave a soft smile even as he used the time to stab backwards and impale Scorpion on his bone blade. Very well, Nadas finally said. This will be the last battle. And he smirked behind his mask as he was certain that the blonde had no idea what he was getting into. Chapter 13. Untiomashu. Naruto looked at Nadas. I am so going to kick your ass. Bring it, boy. The two lunged at one another, their hands inches from connecting with the other's face when lightning from the sky slammed into the ground and a gust of wind separated them. Raiden! Nadas growled. Naruto looked at the figure in white, wearing in Naruto's opinion a very cool hat. What's the deal? When you helped me break free, you said I'd get to fight this bastard. This drew Nada's attention. You interfered? What about? You returned your servants to life after these people killed them. You broke the ties to their world and had them reborn in this world. Raiden said, his white eyes on the skull mask of Nada's. You called for mortal combat, then so be it. Each side pick 8 fighters. In 1 month you will all meet on Hangman's Isle. There will be no fighting until then. Raiden said, and overhead lightning crashed and thunder rolled. Nada's hand made a fist, and the sound of his knuckles cracking filled the air. You can't do this, the masked menace snarled. Raiden chuckled, and it sounded like his voice was laced with static electricity. Remember, Nada's, you called for mortal combat. Now the rules must be observed. Nada snarled. Fine. Including myself, I want. He looked to the side. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Goro, Kano, Noob Saibot, Reptile, and Princess Kitana. Raiden nodded as the downed fighters were restored with a blast of the Thunder God's power. Raiden then turned towards Naruto. Choose. Naruto looked at those arrayed against him, and he made his choices. Myself, Kimimaro, Gaara, Hinata, Haku, my mother, Anko, and... Here Naruto paused and looked at everyone. Who should he choose to fill the last spot? He looked at Orochimaru and knew his uncle couldn't go, as he had to see to their people and take care of the survivors. The same with the old man, as Naruto knew that the Konoha survivors would follow him. The others remained quiet as the decision was his. Naruto wanted to be selfish this one time. Lord Raiden? Yes, Naruto? The Thunder God said with a smile. He could nearly hear the thought in the boy's mind already. Can I request anyone? Naruto asked. You may. The Thunder God smiled. For the last spot I ask for, Minato Namikaze. You could hear a pin drop. And that concludes this story. Thank you for spending your time here at Ichiraku Ramen and listening all the way to the end. Your support helps keep these stories alive and allows the Shinobi world to continue through new adventures and alternate timelines. If you enjoyed the Littlest Sannin 2, Sound in Autumn, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. Once again, full credit goes to EroSlackerMicha, the original writer of this story. If you would like to read the original version, you can find the link to the story in the description below. Let me know in the comments what story you would like to hear next. Until the next time, stay safe, and I'll see you again at Ichiraku Ramen.